Kathy Griffin talks about not being an A-list celebrity, but that's not true when it comes to her business empire that she's built. Entrepreneur partner Kelsey Humphreys joins us now.
How did the Groundlings come into that?
Okay, so I grew up in Chicago worshiping Second City.
Yes.
And so many of my comedy favorites were in Second City. Everyone from Joan Rivers to, John Belushi to so many of the SNL people that we know and love. But when we moved to Los Angeles, I was only 18. So I looked in the LA Weekly, and for the Free Weekly, of course, and they said that there's this improv theater that's very similar to Second City. So I think my second week in Los Angeles, I took the number 4 bus to a Groundlings show on a Friday night at 8 o'clock, and I just was blown away. So I'm in the audience. It's 99 seats, because in Los Angeles they do a lot of equity waiver, and that means if you have a theater under 100 seats, you don't have to pay anybody. So all the years I was in the Groundlings, I actually paid dues to have the permission to perform, which none of my relatives in Chicago could figure out. They're like, why do you work for free? I'm like, I don't, I pay to work. And so the very first night I went to the Groundlings, I thought the show was so incredible. And they were all amazing, but there was one person I thought, frankly, was the best person. So I marched backstage. This is like a little tiny theater. And I marched to the back, the dressing room, and I went up to him, and I basically snuck into a dressing room, and I said, hi, I just moved here from Illinois. My name is Kathy. I want to do what you do. How do I do that? And he was so nice. He's like, well, there's a whole school, and then you try to get in the company, and that person's name was Phil Hartman.
Wow.
So I met Phil Hartman like the second week I was in Los Angeles by basically being inappropriate and going backstage. And then what's crazy is years later, I went through the Groundling school, I finally got in the company, and years later, it was crazy. Phil came back for 1 season before he went to SNL, and I got to actually work with him.
Wow.
Yeah, and I always said, I'm like, this is all because of you, because you were so encouraging to me. So I didn't go to college, which was a big mistake, but I was so determined to start working. I did my first commercial when I was 17. So first of all, I didn't know what a brand was at that time.
Right.
But when I moved to Los Angeles and I was an extra after a couple of years, one of the other extras said, I think you qualify to be in the union. And then I got in the union and I thought, this is it.
Yeah.
And then I didn't work for 10 years. I mean, the Groundlings, of course, doesn't pay. I had to pay to perform.
Right.
And I was auditioning for just everything. And I'll be honest, my time in Los Angeles, even before the Groundlings, but even in the Groundlings, I was surrounded by so many talented people, so many just great people, Lisa Kudrow and John Lovitz and, Sherry O'Terry and Will Ferrell and just so many talented people. And everybody was getting breaks but me. It finally happened, but I'm going to be honest, it's just year after year of congratulations, and I wanted to be on SNL so bad, and I auditioned twice and I just wasn't good enough and all this stuff. And, so that was part of it, is every time one of my pals would get successful, I'd at least try to get a takeaway. So I'd be like, oh, okay, Lisa Kudrow's characters are way better than mine. I got to work on my characters. Or I'd go, okay, well, this person, and that's frankly how I got into stand-up. This person, in fact, Lisa was one of the few people who said to me in the beginning, I don't know, I think you might be better at stand-up than characters. And she was right. And so then Jeanine Garofalo, Colin Quinn, and Judy Toll, a friend of mine who went on to write for Sex and the City, we decided to put on our own show. And this is how much confidence I had. We would put on a weekly show. I would get the Groundling Theater for free, and we put on shows for $1 because I was so convinced nobody would come to see us.
Wow.
And I had an actual timer on stage because people in LA are so jaded. They don't want to go to anything longer than an hour. So I'd have 4 comics, myself and 3 others, and we would set the timer for 15 minutes. I'm not kidding. When the bell would go off, I'd be like, ladies and gentlemen, Jeanine Garofalo. It didn't matter where you were.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, it worked.
Let's talk about your relationship with Joan, because obviously she was, ahead of you a few years and helping your career, but you said she also helped you with building your brand and thinking through your audience.
We would just get down and dirty and we would talk smack about everybody. Vicious. If anyone was overhearing the table, they would have just sent us to jail. But nobody was more fun to dish with and stuff. But also, she just was always giving me tips. She was just so incredibly great with money and so badass. And, got in there at QVC. Nobody can get the QVC deal she had. Nobody. She got in there when you could actually get a piece of that money. And, that was her, real money. And yet she still always, she could have flown private, and she still flew commercial, and she always watched her money, but she spent it on the stuff that was very, very important to her. So her business acumen was just off the charts. And she always taught me also have as many irons in the fire as possible because you just don't know what will stick. And she really lived that. I mean, she did everything from the Center Square and Hollywood Squares to obviously the first and last, and I just want to remind everyone of this, the last female comic to host a nightly network talk show when she did her show on Fox, and prior to that, The Tonight Show. And watching her, because when I was a kid and I didn't know her, I would watch Joan and I'd think, someday I can do that. And then as I got to know her, I saw the struggles, and winning the Celebrity Apprentice at 75 blew my mind. The night before she went into her coma, she did an hour of stand-up for free just for the love of the game, and that's who she was. Still doing QVC on the weekend, still doing Fashion Police, doing her web show, In Bed with Joan. Like, she was just so good about just keep it all going. So that's why I've got emojis and a book and a tour and New Year's Eve with Anderson. Like, she just taught me, like, keep it all going because you don't know what's going to hit.
Okay, so now your number one piece of advice for an aspiring comedian out there.
Okay, remember the business part of show business. Because I didn't know one thing about business when I started, and I actually like it. So it's okay to ask a million questions, and you have to be fiscally responsible.